Labor frontbencher and Shadow Finance Minister Katy Gallagher. Thanks for your time. Given the inflation rate today, is it inevitable the RBA will move on rates next week, do you think?
Well, I don't want to preempt a decision of the RBA. Obviously, they're independent and make their own decisions, but they have been saying for some time, foreshadowing that interest rates won't stay where they currently are and that they will increase. And I'm sure a lot of commentators looking at this number today, which was higher than most expected, I imagine it will raise expectations around that, but this is a matter for the RBA. I think, it's going to be hard on households. That's the message out of today's figure, and if and when interest rates go up, that's another whammy in household budgets.
Anthony Albanese and Labor has been saying there should be across-the-board wage increases. It is a bit of a two-edged sword, isn't it, in the sense that those wage increases will be further inflationary.
Well,
if they eventuate.
Well, our economic plan is around making those suitable investments, to not be inflationary on the economy. So it's about the long term. Wages are part of it though. Like, we've had 10 years of stagnant wages, and anyone who's done a grocery shop in the last week or in the last year, actually, I was doing it on the weekend and staggered at some of the prices that people are paying now. If your wages aren't keeping up with that, you're going to be in strife, but you have to find that balance. That's why our economic plan is around a whole range of things, cleaner and cheaper energy, skills, childcare, NBN and a future made in Australia. These are about long-term improvements to the economy that will put downward pressure on households in terms of costs, but actually improve productivity across the economy. So you're confident
that can be achieved, wage rises, without driving inflation further?
Yes, I mean, it's got to be measured and sensible, but I don't think we can expect people to be enduring the kind of cost of living increases, childcare, rent, groceries, petrol, it's across the board, whilst their wages are going back, and that's what we've got under the Morrison government.
Should we be reporting on CPI monthly as opposed to quarterly? I know it's a process matter, but it seems to me and to economists that I've spoken to that they say the RBA is playing catch-up footy every time because they're only reporting this data 3 monthly, whereas I think every other country in the G20 reports CPI monthly.
I'd probably defer to the experts on that. I mean, my own view is the more information you have available, the easier it is to sort of target policy responses. But, I'm sure the ABS has a view on that. Either way, whatever's happened every month in the last year, people's cost of living have increased. They're skyrocketing and it's hurting households, and the government doesn't have a long-term plan. I mean, we've supported the short-term measures that they've put in place post the budget, but they've got nothing beyond getting them through the election. This is where we have to have a discussion about how we invest in the productive capability of the economy, but also make sensible investments through the budget and use the budget properly to help support households at the same time.
On the multinational tax measures that you and Jim Chalmers announced today, is this building on what the government has in place already? It doesn't seem like it's any dramatic change on what the government's already got in place.
It is additional to the government's measures, as I understand it. It's a modest adjustment in this area, but we think it's an important part of managing those pressures we've just been talking about in terms of making sure that households aren't having to shoulder the tax burden, and that where you've got multinationals who might be avoiding paying tax, that we are looking at ways to get that revenue back into the budget.
And you won't be driving companies offshore with this sort of approach?
No, this is the OECD's Pillar 2 approach. This is what 137 countries have signed up to. I think the Morrison government signed up to it too. That's our understanding. But this is moving forward in a measured way to put in place this. It does have a positive impact in terms of revenue, modest again, but whoever wins the election, I hope it's the Labor Party, there's a significant budget repair job ahead, and we need to be sensible about that.
Given the shock the economy has been through, shouldn't the government get some credit for how well Australia has pulled through, even though inflation at 5.1%, compared to America it's 8.5%, UK 7%, Canada 6.7%, New Zealand 6.9% inflation, ours 5.1%, it's high, but broadly the other parameters are great. Low unemployment, growth continues. We've done pretty well considering what the country's had to endure the last couple of years?
Well, I think we've taken a constructive approach to supporting the government with some of the response, or in fact the majority of the response to the pandemic. I mean, anyone in their position should have made the investments that they did, but we think it could be better coming out of it. I mean, Scott Morrison wanders around saying everything's great with the economy, no problem here, we're the best at this job. But I think when you go down to the household level, when you talk to people on the streets, what they're talking to you about is how they can't meet the cost of living, energy prices going up and wages going backwards. And, we welcome low unemployment, but that figure is only one figure. There is a different story that's happening across the country in different places, and it's hard on many households, and we need a longer term plan to deal with that.
What do you say to the suggestion from the Prime Minister that the safeguard mechanism on emissions reduction for the 215 companies affected is a sneaky carbon tax?
Well, this is his policy. He was part of the government that put in place the safeguard mechanism. This is covering the same companies that his safeguard mechanism puts in place. And I would say it's a Prime Minister who's trying to distract from the real issues facing people at this election by trying to run his old, tired scare campaigns that he's run. And I think Australians are over it. Let's have a serious debate about how you meet the climate challenge. Most Australians, in fact, majority of Australians get that. We don't need a Prime Minister wandering around, making up lies and scare campaigns when what we need is someone who's going to take a real action about addressing some of these challenges.
Finally, before you go, the Labor launch this Sunday in Perth. How important is it for you or for your leader, Anthony Albanese, coming out of isolation with COVID, to come out with a strong positive message as opposed to just having a crack at the other side? Because obviously there are many voters who are wavering. They're not convinced yet about him.
Yeah, sure. This is a 42-day campaign and it's going to go right down to the wire. We take nothing for granted and every single day is important. So the launch is important. No doubt you will hear a very positive message coming out of Anthony. We've already announced a number of policies that are positive in climate, aged care, future made in Australia, childcare. These are all based on the feedback we're getting from the community, but you'll hear more from Labor, and we look forward to having Anthony back on the team.